wonderful discussion with Ambassador Khan from Pakistan. I won't go too deep into your background. I think many people will know who you are. But Ambassador Khan is a career Foreign Service member of the Pakistani Foreign Service, has served in many places, including Japan, and multiple tours here in the US, I believe. But currently the Pakistani ambassador to the US. Welcome, and thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you for having me, and it's such a pleasure to be joining this conversation for the World Affairs Council, and thank you so much for hosting me.
Sure, we really appreciate it. This morning we were at Bow High School, and you got an opportunity to speak with some of the students, hear their questions. How did you find that experience?
Oh, wonderful, actually, and I think I only realized that we should do that more often, because it's important to come to these places, because in Washington, D.C., I think the environment is oversaturated, and the population is overfed with information and on international developments. But when it comes to places as far away from Washington as New Hampshire and Bow High School is, but I found these students, I must say that they raised very important questions. They were also very attentive throughout. And for me to have more than 100, 120 students in the hall was frankly very energizing. And I certainly would like to do more often such interactions with students in future also.
Great. And we did record that discussion, so any schools who would like to check it out have the opportunity by going to our website. But I wanted to also mention that it's not your first time to New England, it's your first time to New Hampshire, and we'd just love to get your initial thoughts and reactions to our little state here.
Well, I must say that, first of all, I've been looked after very well. I was just at the State House before coming here, and we were given a tour of the State House, the State Assembly, the State Senate by Senator Lou DeSalandro. I think that name is a tongue twister for me. I was amazed to see, while in DC we do get a sense of the importance of New Hampshire as a state, but frankly I wasn't aware of how important and significant New Hampshire is in so many ways. And the size of your state assembly and being one of the oldest assemblies in the United States is what makes I think it is important and relevant for all ambassadors in Washington, D.C. I've also visited the Career Museum yesterday, where they have an ongoing exhibition on carpets from the Islamic world, and I was heartened to see a Pakistani carpet on display. I've also been treated to some very nice food at some of your popular restaurants, which I find also very interesting. I wish I had more time to go around, and I also wish I had come maybe a few weeks early to be able to see the autumn and the changing of colors of the leaves, but maybe next time. But this time around, I think I've covered a lot of ground, and I'm quite happy and satisfied.
Well, good, and of course, as is always the case here in New Hampshire, it's almost political time, particularly for the presidential primary. I know we just seemingly had the election, but it's a great opportunity to come up and see all of the presidential candidates. They'll probably start coming in maybe a year or two, really after the midterms. It starts.
And I think that was another interesting, I would say, event for me to go and call on the Secretary of State of New Hampshire and to actually see the ballot, the first ballot that both the Republican and the Democratic primaries and candidates are put on. And for me to see both 2016 ballots and 2020 ballot, which I obviously made a copy and a photograph of, and also the declaration that all candidates signed. So, I mean, for me, I've been in and out of United States many times, but this was the first time for me to actually experience that. So I think that particular part of my activity here was both interesting and very educating for me.
Well, good. We're glad that Dr. Salman Malik, who's sitting just off screen here, has taken such good care of you while you're here in the state. I wanted to turn a little bit to your background. Obviously, as I mentioned, career foreign service. Can you tell us a little bit about what a job in the foreign service for Pakistan looks like, and what some of your experiences have been, and how you find yourself the ambassador to the U.S. at this point?
I think being a diplomat and being a foreign service officer puts us into a family and a tradition that is shared by almost all the foreign offices, and being a diplomat moving from one place to another is both very interesting and can be actually very challenging also, if not for the individual himself or herself, but for the family sometimes, you know. In my case, perhaps I've been lucky because you could actually divide my career into three almost equal pieces. One part of my career is my service and exposure to Japan, where I started my career. I learned Japanese language, I was trained there. I did my master's and my PhD from Japan. And I was also the first Pakistani Japanese speaking ambassador in Tokyo. So that was, and I think Japan, serving in Japan and serving in United States are two very important capitals for us to serve, but two very different capitals, two very different traditions, two very different societies, and two very different cultures. And then the multilateral part of my experience and exposure as a diplomat. And multilateral line of work is completely different from what it is like to be a diplomat in the bilateral context. And I was in New York with with our permanent mission to the United Nations, and I served there for over 6 years. I was head of our multilateral division as well. So that experience was also very instructive and educating, and in some ways I would say for diplomats from developing countries, I think doing at least one stint in UN system is very important, because I think that is one place where you are essentially on your own. You are the master of your brief also in some ways, because you are the one who is speaking up and is going to vote one way or the other, and react to what other countries and other delegations are saying. And therefore that gives you a unique opportunity to learn to speak, to basically also be able to write and report and prepare statements, because the intensity and volume of work is enormous. Except that I think in multilateral work, some of that is less concrete and tangible than what it is in the bilateral line of work, and also almost all delegates are treated as equal, so you don't really feel the weight and pressure of your interlocutor when it comes to. So I think I could very clearly divide my career into three independent streams. One, the Japan stream, and of course then the United States, where I have served practically at every single position in our system. I have served as Deputy Chief of Mission, I have served as acting ambassador in Washington, and now as ambassador for 3 years, and it's been an extremely satisfying and learning experience for me.
Good. And one of my favorite questions that we ask all of our international visitors when they come through the U.S. Department of State exchange program, including many of your fellow countrymen, anything that surprised you about your time in the U.S.? What are some of the things that you maybe didn't expect to see when you first came here to the United States?
You know what struck me as very different, and I say this because I came to United States first after finishing my assignment in Japan. So I flew out from Tokyo to Seattle, and from Seattle I took the flight down to New York. You know, what struck me was the diversity. From the point of entering into U.S. Territory to the point of going to immigration and then getting out, I think I came across, God knows, 60 or 70 or 100 different faces and nationalities, you know. And then that is what, and as I walked out, you know, and as I stayed in Manhattan back then, the diversity that you see on the roads and streets and bazaars in the United States is what makes your country as very special, as very unique. And it struck me more because I was coming from Japan, which is the other extreme, where you hardly ever get to see so many or too many foreign faces, you know. So I think that was, and the other thing that has now over the years, as I have spent more time here in different capacities, is the equality of opportunity. I think this is the beauty of this country, where you can aspire to be anything and everything. And as long as you work hard for the goals that you set yourself, I have seen members of our community, and that's the other very important takeaway for me after my visit here in New Hampshire, because I'm so very delighted and heartened to see members of Pakistani American diaspora doing so very well in this state, and that's true for a number of other places also. And I think that is what makes you and your country as very, very unique and special.
So turning a little bit to policy here, we want to just, I think, start off and give people a sense of what life is like these days in Pakistan before turning to more of the foreign policy relations discussion we'll get into. So can you tell us a little bit about life in Pakistan these days? How are you guys dealing with coronavirus, something that the entire world is still struggling with today? And just sort of what the priorities at home are for your country.
Yes, I think like most of the countries right now, the government for the past almost 2 years has been almost entirely focused on dealing with limiting the impact of corona, dealing with the economic implications of corona, also trying to keep the economy on a growth trajectory. And in terms of corona pandemic, COVID pandemic, I think Pakistan has done reasonably well, I would say, by a developing country standard. We have in some ways perhaps done outstandingly well, because for a country of 220 million, our total infections so far are little less than 1.3 million, and with a total casualty rate, even though even one life lost is a huge loss, but the total number is around 28,000. And now the infection rate has gone below 1%, and the overall cases, recorded cases in Pakistan have for the first time gone below 300 every day. So that really, when compared to any country of similar size, it is really, and I think it is a result of the agility that the government demonstrated in coming together, in setting up a national coordination mechanism, in taking measures, taking tough decisions, also making those difficult choices in the early part. And that has now, right now, our challenge really is the procurement of vaccines and the administration and distribution of vaccines. We have, US has been, I must say, and thank through you, the government and people of the United States for their generous support. We have so far received around 23 million vaccines. We have also purchased from our own resources, I think another 20 million vaccines from United States. In total, we have administered, I think, close to around 114 million doses, with almost 50 million people fully vaccinated in Pakistan. That number, frankly, is still small. We have started to basically, we are working on developing our own indigenous vaccines also, and that's another area where we hope to get cooperation from international sources. So that's one area where finally, touch wood, things are starting to look up and getting back to normal. The other challenge, obviously, is the stabilization of the economy, because in some ways COVID hit us at, unfortunately, a very wrong time, because government, as it went in, it took a slew of very tough economic reform measures, and as we were getting ready to reap the dividends of those tough measures, then COVID hit us, and it resulted in overall contraction of the economy, although our economic contraction still compared with other countries in the region is still better. But now the projections are that we are going to grow hopefully by about 5%, this coming year, which is really from minus 0.5 and 1 to basically 4.2 to 5% is a pretty significant achievement. We are determined to continue with some of those tough reforms, improving our tax collection and revenue generation capacity, also reforming the state-owned enterprises, and as well as the circular debt, which has also been a problem. So overall, domestically, it's really keeping the prices, because inflation has hit everywhere.
Right.
It's a challenge for any government, so much so for our government also. People are not happy, frankly, with the rising prices. So keeping prices as far as one can do is a priority for the government, and also keeping the COVID-related numbers low.
Well, I'm glad to hear that things are trending in the right direction when it comes to both COVID and the economy. Of course, we want to see everyone doing well, and that's very good to hear. Of course, the big thing in discussions about Pakistan today are mainly viewing your country through the lens of Afghanistan. So can you tell us a little bit about how the US withdrawal has affected daily life in Pakistan, the way you are thinking about your region, the security in your country, and anything else you'd like to share?
Well, at least so far, frankly, we had consistently maintained that we do not want a precipitate US withdrawal. We want a responsible US exit from Afghanistan, and we worked very closely with the United States in facilitating the peace process that led to that agreement between United States and Taliban. And in the aftermath, in the lead up to the decision to withdraw, and as the withdrawal was taking place, we coordinated and worked very closely, even in facilitating the evacuations of US assets. We cooperated closely in evacuating US nationals. We have also so far between 27,000 to 30,000 people have transited through Pakistan or are in Pakistan from 39 countries. So that's basically one immediate area of support and cooperation that we have seen taking place between United States and Pakistan. Frankly, we have not seen the kind of outflow of people or refugees that we were fearing so far. There is some trickling down or coming in of people, but we have not seen the kind of refugee flows that we were fearing. To facilitate the economic crisis or to help the Afghan people with the economic crisis, we have lifted all the tax and import levies on goods from Afghanistan. So that has actually resulted in a higher flow of eatables, fruits, vegetables, and other imports from Afghanistan into Pakistan. So that's one impact that we are noticing. The trade flow has also expanded, but right now our main worry is the unfolding humanitarian catastrophe in Afghanistan, because they already had drought. They don't have any money to buy eatables and food items from overseas. They don't have access to their own money and resources. Some of that money is parked here in United States, some in Europe. And the international assistance, provision of international assistance is also taking time. And in all this, I think what is really critically important is the time. And our fear is that if the humanitarian situation worsens further, then we are going to see an influx of refugees, not just in Pakistan, but all across the region and the extended region also. And we are already seeing some signs of refugees, going out into Iran, and through Iran into Turkey, and through Turkey into Europe. We are also afraid of the structures falling apart, leading to ungoverned spaces, where because of the economic compulsions, we might see a rise in drug production, which again would impact countries in the neighborhood and also in the extended neighborhood. And we certainly want to avoid that. And for that reason, we've been urging all the international community members, including the United Nations, to take urgent notice of the situation on the ground and to take appropriate measures to counter this unfolding catastrophe. And then politically also, I think the last one important platform that has reflected the broad consensus amongst some of the most important players in the context of Afghanistan is the extended Troika platform, which includes United States, Russia, China, and Pakistan. The last time extended Troika met was in Doha around 11th of August. After that, the special representatives of these countries were in touch, but they never really met formally. So I think their meeting in Islamabad day before yesterday was a welcome development. for them to agree on a joint statement which reflects the broad consensus of all these players, where they have basically expressed concern over the deteriorating economic situation. They have expressed concerns on this whole thing unraveling and then the catastrophe getting further aggravated. So they have called upon also, apart from agreeing to do whatever is required, they have also called upon Taliban to basically continue to work for a broad-based inclusive government, to not let Afghan territory be used for terrorism. And I think declaration in many ways provides the kind of roadmap for the international community to engage with Taliban. And I think for these countries to speak with one voice also conveys a very important message to the Taliban government. That's basically what we hope would lead to basically Taliban hearing what international community is saying, and the international community, because extended Troika also had a direct interaction with the interim foreign minister of the Taliban government, where he was able to present their perspective to these important countries. So that dialogue and engagement, I believe, should continue. Well, recognition may come, may not come, but what is really needed is to keep talking, keep telling them what the expectations of the international community are, and to keep hearing from them in terms of what their concerns are.
Great. So the US and Pakistan have been working together on the issue of Afghanistan for 40 years and issues of security for the past 70 years. Can you tell us a little bit about, over that 70-year period since your country's founding, what has really been the driving forces of relations between the US and Pakistan outside of security?
Again, I think you're right. It's been, whether we like it or not, it's been a security-centered relationship. And as a student of Pakistan-US relations, I can tell you that our relationship has been kind of defined by one Cold War and two hot wars. The Cold War was from 1947, at least for us, until 1979. And then the first hot war was from 79 to 1988, 89. And then the second hot war was from post 9/11. So in all this, what happened was that this relationship essentially remained a intelligence-driven, security-driven, counter-terrorism-driven relationship, which frankly did not allow the other dimensions of our relationship to grow as much as they should, because if you look at despite this security centricity, US has been the most sought after destination for Pakistani students for generations now. And most of the diaspora that you see here from our country are those who at some point in time came here to study. And a large number of those community members are basically technocrats and professionals. Similarly, on the trade side also, US today is the largest export destination, single country export destination for Pakistan. US also has been one of the top 5 investors in Pakistan for the entire 70 or 74 years of Pakistan history, and US is today, as we speak, the largest non-debt related financial flows into Pakistan. So that really tells you a lot about the potential of this relationship, because despite the security centricity that we have had all these years, we were still able to basically have these robust non-security dimensions to the relationship, also with trade being a key pillar, with remittances flows with investment. And I believe that we should even work more aggressively, because our relationship on the economic side is far below its true potential, because Pakistan is a huge market. We are the 5th largest country in the world, with a very with the rapidly growing middle class, a middle class that is very keen to basically buy new things, a middle class that is keen to enjoy new products, and that's where we have this potential for investment collaboration. Similarly, agriculture has been a golden chapter in the Pakistan-US relationship, and usually because security related issues make more attractive news. So that's why security subjects remain in the mainstream media. But agriculture has been a great story in our relationship. Almost the entire green revolution in Pakistan came about thanks to the support and cooperation that the United States extended. Almost all the key educational institutions and research institutions in Pakistan have been historically created either with the direct support or with the inspiration of institutions in the United States, and are manned by those who basically graduated from here. You would also be surprised to learn that Pakistan has been consistently the largest recipient of Fulbright scholarship programs over the years. So all of this, similarly our bureaucracy, many of our civil servants are trained or educated here. The defense collaboration has also been a very strong pillar of our relationship. So if you look at all of this, despite the security centricity, we really have moved forward, and that only tells you about the true potential. And our government today is keener than ever before to more aggressively explore expansion in the non-security dimensions of the relationship.
Okay, so one more security-related question. As we've seen here in the U.S., the media, the Congress have been, and the defense industry have been sort of pushing the idea or the theory that Pakistan was more of a challenge than a support in the war in Afghanistan. Can you talk to us a little bit about the view from Pakistan in your involvement in the U.S.-led war in Afghanistan, how that impacted your country, and what lessons should be learned from all this?
I think, yes, that's been a challenge, I think, both in Washington and in Islamabad. Because, when the first hot war, where the United States decided to support the resistance against Soviet Union, and US decided to support Mujahideen through Pakistan. And that resistance essentially led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. And US went back raising the victory flag. without firing a single bullet, But that war, frankly, impacted Pakistan in so many ways, fundamental ways. I think the social fabric changed. The way we lived, and I come from that generation that has seen that pre-Soviet invasion phase of Pakistan also. And the cost that our society paid never really factored in any calculation here in Washington, D.C. And that left this impression that United States, and as soon as Soviet forces withdrew, United States also walked away. So it created that perception that US is only a fair weather friend. They come to us when they need us, and this moment that need is over, they simply just walk away. And then the second hot war happened, where US started to feel that we are not doing what we are saying we are doing, and that basically contributed to a lot of mistrust between the two sides, for us, the war did not start in 2001 or 2002. For us, it was a continuation of something that started in 1979. For you, it just started after, because that was the second so-called hot war. So, somehow our relationship got linked to the ups and downs, because you had a huge footprint in Afghanistan. You had at one point in time over 100,000 troops there. So it kind of played out in your domestic politics also, which was never the case before. So Pakistan became the target. Pakistan, if one soldier died, somehow the finger will be pointed out at Pakistan. Whereas, I think the speed at which the Afghan forces collapsed, I think, goes a long way in demonstrating how some of these myths were created in terms of holding Pakistan responsible for everything that went wrong. And the Afghan government and the Afghan leaders, basically blamed us for their own delinquencies, for their own shortcomings, and for their own corruption. Somehow it was politically convenient even for the US military leaders to readily buy into that narrative. I'm not saying that we didn't make mistakes. I'm sure we must have also made mistakes, and we have made mistakes, as you have made mistakes. And I think this is really a time to not look backwards. It is really time to look ahead, based on the fact that for the past 3-4 years, Pakistan has extended unconditional support and cooperation. Today, our objectives are deeply aligned on Afghanistan. We want to exactly be there where you want to be. We don't want Afghanistan to turn into a safe haven for terrorists ever again. And I think that provides us with a sound basis, and also an opportunity to take the Afghanistan burden off the Pakistan-US relationship. Because once this is taken off, we have, as I said, a very strong, compelling case for a standalone, broad-based, close partnership between United States and Pakistan.
So obviously there are many more countries in the world than just these two that we've been talking about. Can you tell us a little bit, obviously the long-standing history between India and Pakistan, China as well plays a large role in your region. What do regional affairs look like today? Are they overly positive? Are there challenges? What does it look like for you guys?
Well, of course, I think we have a very interesting neighborhood. And that makes the job of our diplomacy ever more difficult, complex, and challenging. China has been a very close friend, as has been the United States of America. And as things escalate between the United States and China, that frankly is not a good news for us, because we really don't want to get into any kind of a camp politics, and so for now, and I don't know if you are aware, even the rapprochement between US and China happened because of Pakistan's good offices. The famous Dr. Henry Kissinger visit to Beijing happened little over 50 years ago in July 1971. And he took that trip from Islamabad, and Pakistan played a very important role in bringing China and the United States together. So, and I think our diplomacy also has matured to a point where we are able to maintain, different relationships by respecting the red lines of all our close friends. I mean, we will be perhaps surprised to learn that in Washington, D.C., Pakistan also, I represent the Iranian interests in Washington, D.C. And we have done that since 1979. And we have maintained a very good relationship with both Iran and Saudi Arabia. We have maintained a very good relationship between Saudi Arabia and Qatar also. So we feel that US and China escalation would put more pressure, but we are convinced that the size of the pie in South Asia, particularly in Pakistan, is large enough for these two countries to coexist. We don't want to make choices between the two, and so far what we are hearing from our friends in the administration, they don't want us to make those choices also, which is a welcome development, and we would really want to keep it that way. And when it comes to India, it's really more complicated. Because unfortunately India under BJP and Prime Minister Modi-led BJP is really drifting in the wrong direction, and somehow there has emerged a more fundamental and structural challenge in Pakistan-India relationship, because for BJP, Pakistan is more a domestic political issue than a foreign policy issue. And whenever they are, or BJP government is in trouble, they use the Pakistan card to basically, bolster their dropping approval ratings, and we have seen Prime Minister Modi do that over a long political career. He has really built a career by punching Pakistan, by presenting himself as very strong and muscular on relations with Pakistan. Now the problem is that as and when he will or his party will get in political trouble, they will use the time-tested card, which is Pakistan card, for their own domestic political gains. So that trend is, unfortunately, it doesn't bode well for political engagement between India and Pakistan. And then on top of that, what Prime Minister Modi has done in Kashmir, in terms of basically undoing whatever legal framework was there in the occupied Kashmir, by revoking Article 370 and 25A. He has actually gone back to the commitments that the Indian leaders had made to the people of Kashmir. He has gone back to what the international community expected from India and Pakistan in the context of Kashmir through the UN Security Council resolutions. He has even gone back on the bilateral commitments that India had made with Pakistan through various agreements. So by undoing, taking those unilateral actions, India really has closed the door for a meaningful engagement and dialogue. How this is going to be reversed and whether we will have the revival of engagement with India, really the ball is in India's court because it is Prime Minister Modi who has brought things to this point. So he really has to take measures to undo those actions, to build confidence, particularly in terms of what they are doing with their minorities, not just in Kashmir, across India. And the manner in which Muslims are being victimized, the manner in which Christians are being attacked and the churches are being attacked, I think all of that is contrary to the ideas that successive Indian regimes and the idea on which India was founded. And that should be a concern for many here, and that should be a concern for the international community. That certainly is a concern in Pakistan.
Yeah, we certainly want to make sure that India and Pakistan at least keep a lid on the tensions, being two nuclear powered states. But we see, obviously, you mentioned China as a good friend of Pakistan. The US seems to be increasing relations with India. How do you see this sort of mishmash of players coming together and making sure that those tensions do stay under wraps?
For us, I think, yes, that's a challenge. While we say that we don't want our relationship to be seen through any other country's prism, so we don't want your relationship, US relationship with India, to be in any way a determinant of US relationship with Pakistan. Nor do we want our relationship with China to be a determinant of our relationship with the United States. But when things get out of hand or out of control, or relationship worsens between India and China, and there is escalation between US and China also, it plays out in the region, whether we like it or not. Our objective really is and will remain to the extent that we can to basically immunize our relationship and to see it independent of these two relationships. But yes, it is a growing challenge. It will remain a challenge, and we will continue to at least pursue aspirationally a standalone close partnership with the United States.
Following on the China thread, we hear a lot of stories around the world of very positive outcomes from the Belt and Road Initiative and very negative outcomes. What has Pakistan's experience with the Belt and Road Initiative been? I know that they're building some ports, some infrastructure. What has that experience been for your country?
Well, I think so far as you would perhaps know that China came to Pakistan, frankly, when no one else was either ready or willing to invest in Pakistan. And they came to invest in infrastructure, particularly to the energy-related infrastructure at a time when we were experiencing power outages in some areas for 16 to 20 hours. We also had a connectivity deficit with roads and rail not being adequate enough. So I think the China-Pakistan economic corridor and the investments that they brought in through the CBAC initiatives did help in improving remarkably the energy situation in Pakistan, and we did see at least promised complete elimination of power outages in Pakistan. We have also seen the building of infrastructure and improvement of road connectivity in Pakistan. And that has, I would say, because these were the two essentially disincentives for foreign investors to come to Pakistan, because any production or industrial activity with power as an important input did impact the economic competitiveness of production activity in Pakistan. So these two areas and improvement that Chinese investments made has basically leveled the playing field and push us to a point where we are ready to welcome investments from any and every country. And in that regard, we have made it very clear, and we say it repeatedly, that we are not open just for Chinese investments. I mean, we have the special economic zone, we have these special technology zones also, where we are welcoming and inviting US investors, we are welcoming and inviting European investors, and we are consistently messaging that Pakistan is not open just for Chinese investment. So, and in some ways, if you look at what is even happening in Afghanistan, really, I think, and I say this, want to basically flag this, because we will never be able to have long-term sustainable peace in Afghanistan unless we enable them to transition from a war-centered economy to a normal economy. And that transition will not be possible unless and until all countries come together. I mean, it's not for United States alone. It's not for China alone. It's not for Russia alone. So if we can all work together to make Afghanistan as the arena for collaboration and cooperation rather than for competition and confrontation, it creates a win-win for everybody. And then by extension, I think the larger regional integration and some of the other projects, because CPAC is in some ways also complementing the connectivity projects that are being funded by the World Bank, projects that are being funded by the Asian Development Bank. So those projects also complement the overall regional integration and connectivity priorities. So I would say in one phrase that CPAC has been a factor of good for us in Pakistan, and for us to be able to take it to the next level, we really would like to welcome investments from other partner countries.
Okay. Before I give you an opportunity to finish up with any final comments, of course, climate change is one of the biggest issues today in foreign policy. We just finished up the COP26. Can you tell us a little bit about what Pakistan's view on climate change is and what you guys are doing in terms of global commitments?
Oh, Pakistan is I would say, at least our Prime Minister is single-mindedly committed. He is an avid environmentalist. He has, Pakistan, as you know, is a country which is one of the top 10 most vulnerable countries in the world, despite the fact that we contribute very little in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. Our emissions are less than 1%, and our voluntary emission reduction commitments are already way above what we are expected to achieve otherwise. So that way we are contributing both through the adaptation as well as mitigation channels. Our national commitment and our Prime Minister's commitment is very clear and categorical. And we say this not because we are theoretically looking at, we experience climate change every day. We have experienced, we are experiencing drought, we are experiencing floods, we are experiencing change and shifting precipitation patterns in Pakistan, you know. So all of that, and Pakistan has, I don't know if you are aware, historically, I myself chaired the Bali 13th Bali COP, where the Bali Plan of Action was agreed to between the international community, and where this four-pillar approach to dealing with climate change, where adaptation, mitigation, technology, and finance, all four pillars were basically put together as a package. And I think that is what makes any progress on climate change critical, and providing the financing is something that will enable countries like Pakistan, who are already doing a lot and are willing and ready to do more, but only if they are provided with the financial and technological support by the developing countries. And I must say that Sakti Kerry met our Prime Minister in Saudi Arabia on the margins of the Green Climate Summit. We already have a dialogue process in place with the United States on climate change, and we are working to create this as an important conversation track between our two countries.
Well, wonderful. I want to thank you first and foremost for your time, but turn it over to you if you feel we've missed anything or something that you want to leave our audience with that you really would like them to know.
Well, I just want to say that, for us in Pakistan, our relationship, we value our relationship with the United States. For us, it has always been an important and consequential relationship, and we want to continue to have that relationship and want to have a broad-based standalone relationship. And I think in that, people of United States and Pakistan have an important role to play. Our diaspora has acted as a bridge. I'm very glad that I was able to meet some of our influential diaspora members here. And I would really encourage your viewers to consider traveling to Pakistan, because I think our biggest strength is the warmth and hospitality of our people, and that you can only experience if you get to go to Pakistan. So I encourage you and I welcome you to come and visit Pakistan. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share my thoughts and perspectives on the relationship.
Well, thank you again. We hope to see you back up in New Hampshire sometime soon, perhaps when the leaves are changing colors again next year, or when the presidential candidates are up here. Thank you also to all of our viewers for taking the time to watch and engage with this World Affairs Council of New Hampshire program. We really appreciate it and hope that you have enjoyed and found this presentation useful.
And this is a small token for you,
Thank you.
which will remind you of our conversation today.
Well, thank you very much.